We have great pleasure to welcome Dr. Nilay Yagnik, the Provost Vice Chancellor of Navratna University, Vadodara. A brief introduction about Dr. Nilay. Dr. Nilay Yagnik has done his instrumentation engineering from Birla Institute of Technology Science, Pilani, India. His management from Narsimoji Institute of Management Studies and PhD from University Mumbai. He has over 13 years of experience in IT with leading companies like Wipro, Digital HP, and Mastech. He's also had and followed up by 28 years plus teaching experience in the field of IT and management. Over to you, Dr. Nilay.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan Rao. Thank you, Dr. Datta.
Thank you.
And Dr. Mohan and all the CII colleagues here for inviting me to speak at such a prestigious conference. I think it's a very relevant topic that you've put in that we are discussing today, which is basically the future of education, especially with this new changes that are happening in technology. However, when we talk about the future of education through technology, there are some things which we have to appreciate and understand, which is technology as such is not new. And humans have always managed to adjust to technology. Humans have always managed to innovate using whatever technology is available at that point in time. So, for example, the aspect of the Guru Shishya Parampara, the way in which we started our forefathers, our ancestors, that itself was knowledge management. What is known today as knowledge management, but the transfer of knowledge verbally. If you look at the great Library of Alexandria, if you look at some of the pictures or the drawings or the paintings of the great Library of Alexandria, which was about 200 years BC, you see an open courtyard, which is the library. And in the courtyard, you have people like Aristotle and Archimedes and Socrates discussing, deliberating, debating. And that is what learning is all about. And that is what education is all about. Subsequently, if you see the way in which technology has evolved, whether it's an abacus also was a tool. It was a technology which was used to teach people and a technology for people to learn also. But if you go fast forward now into, let's say, around 1900 or so, where you see the actual development of the radio, the commercial development of the radio, you see actually a lot of learning, a lot of education happen on the radio. I know personally of people who have actually learned languages, Russian languages through the radio. And this was way before the internet was commercially available today. I know people who have actually learned as physics, who have learned from Nobel laureates who spoke on various topics through the radio. So the radio has also been an excellent medium for the usage of technology in learning and education. Again, if you move forward and you see the television in our own country around mid-70s, we had the satellite instruction television experiment where you saw rural areas, the TV being used through satellite-based communication, and TV was used as a medium to teach as well as for students to learn in rural areas in groups. So consistently, we are finding that humans have managed to adapt to technology. However, the major disruption that we are seeing happening today, because of the usage of technology, because of the new technology, some of this disruption, in fact, a huge part of this disruption is by force. People were completely taken unawares by the change that happened from March in India, from March in this year. And that was a massive disruption in and a usage in the adaptation of technology. If you look at the way the internet as such, I remember way back in the 90s, the internet was very much used as a training medium in many IT companies globally. And there were tools which were used to collaborate as well using this. For example, the notes platforms where somebody posts a question and there'll be so many responses that come in. So increasingly, you are seeing this kind of a development happening. If you see my own experience, way back in 2001, my institution, where I was working earlier, Narsi Monji Institute of Management, we had actually innovated using VSAT technology, satellite-based technology, to deliver education to corporates. And we had tied up with the service provider, and the teacher would go to the studio and deliver the lecture, live to students across India. Again, if you look at a few years later, around 2004 or 2005, you had as an alumni of BITS Pilani, we were invited to connect back with our alma mater. And we had a BITS Connect project where faculty were invited to teach online. And this was a huge change for me, and it was a very wonderful thing for me to see how humans have adapted to this technology. Because if you see when I was a student in Pilani in 1978, in BITS Pilani, we didn't have a phone. There was no STD also. So if I had to call my parents, I had to go to the post office and book a trunk call and wait for 1 hour to just speak to my parents. That was the way. And in 2004, fast forward 30 years, 2004, I actually delivered a live lecture from my home, which was beamed live to students watching and listening in BITS Pilani campus, a remote village, a remote town in Rajasthan. A few years later, this same technology enhanced to cover all the campuses of BITS. So from my home, I could deliver a lecture which was where the classroom became not just the Pilani classroom, but BITS Pilani campus, the BITS Hyderabad campus, the Goa campus, all were connected. My classroom got extended. And therefore, you see the one-to-many which was happening increased more and more to massively open courses as such, which is what the trend is today, which is what we're seeing. The current university where I'm working, Navratna University, in March itself, we were proactive and we saw it coming, and we were thinking like, what happens if there is a problem? If there is such kind of a problem and the classroom is closed, whatever happens? And so we decided to experiment, train, try and learn people. And this is what I'm coming to about the future of education. That once you are allowing people to experiment, let them, it doesn't matter if they take time to learn. It doesn't matter. It's not about the platform. It's not about the specific technology that you're talking of. It is about the learning and the teaching that is happening. So let the faculty be comfortable in the platform that he is comfortable with. The objective is delivering the session, delivering the class. And that is what we did very successfully. All our 26 programs from undergraduate to PhD were covered. The academic calendar was kept by and large. The exams conducted, results were announced, next semester was announced. So life went on. So the point I'm making is adaptability to the technology is something which humans have always done. The next generation of technology that will come, whether we talk of artificial intelligence in learning, whether we talk of maybe the usage of machine learning, the way in which machines will be able to, heuristic learning. Again, heuristic learning is not a new concept. Way back in the 60s, I remember there was a learning machine where you would actually punish the machine if it makes a mistake. You see, by forcing, it was all memory based. So you would, eradicate all the memory there. You would erase all the memory there and kind of, quote, punish the machine, unquote. So that is happening now today also in that field. So as more and more new technology will come, you will see more and more innovations happening, and people, students, teachers, everyone being able to adapt and learn to this new technology. As what we did right from the Guru Shishya days up till now, humans have constantly innovated in the usage of technology for learning and education. However, there is one aspect which I need to mention now, and this is very critical when we talk about the future of learning and the future of education with technology. And that is the question of adaptability. I think it is very important that education institutions, both schools as well as higher education institutions, have to learn from what corporates are doing. If you see, and it's not just corporate training that I'm talking about, it is the way in which the corporates have managed to adjust with tremendous agility. They have managed to adapt to these changes. Nike, for example, has used, as you all know, probably the shoe which has data, which encourages you, which captures the data as you run, which captures your data. And therefore, Nike is able to customize your requirement. It is a direct to consumer thing that is happening. The same is the case with a company called Dyson, which had a huge, which was basically a vacuum cleaner company. But because the sudden requirement for this COVID happened and ventilators happened, they retooled quickly, adjusted their shop floor quickly, and converted the vacuum tubes, the vacuum cleaner tool room to a ventilator tool room. So the point I'm making is consistently we are seeing, companies are innovating, adapting. The models of e-commerce that you see, whether it's Amazon or Flipkart, they are moving into conventional retail space, and the retail stores are getting into online. Again, it's adaptability. Everyone is changing. Education has to change. Education has to learn and benchmark from the agility of corporates. And this is more and more critical now, especially after this disruption that happened in March. And those organizations, those students, those faculty, those institutions which are able to adapt to this change will make, that will really differentiate the men from the boys as such. And therefore, the change is needed at all aspects, at everyone in this particular ecosystem of education. When we talk about the future of learning and the future of teaching and the future of education with technology, the faculty has to change. The faculty has to learn how to speak to a camera. It is quite a daunting experience when you're actually in a classroom. You've spent 30 years in a classroom speaking to youngsters, taking decisions on how you should actually deliver your course in real time. What should you focus on? What should you accelerate? All that is done in real time because you look at the eyes of the students, you can look at the body language of the students and take real-time decisions on how to deliver your lecture. Because every class is unique. Even after 30 years today, every class of mine is different. And that is what the reality is. But when I'm speaking to a camera, I'm not able to take that kind of real-time decision. I rely on my sixth sense as such, based on maybe a question that is asked, based on maybe some kind of responses that I see. So, the change has to happen, and I have to frequently intervene and ask people like, what do you feel and what's your response? And, so in other words, more and more of student centricity, more and more of participant involvement will be the need of the hour. As we move into this particular future of education. That is from the faculty perspective. The student also has to learn. Gone are the days when you would get everything from your teacher. You see, today there's X amount given by the teacher, 10X has to be researched by you. And the student necessarily and obviously has to change to this dynamism, to this new normal as such. The institution has to change. The metrics of measurement of faculty, for example, faculty performance, the metrics of several parameters that you see for student performance, all that has to change and adapt. The regulators have to change. The rules of yesterday for, let's say, a school or a university may have to change substantially in the new normal that we are looking at. Parents have to change because parents have to understand, in fact, I know when in my own case, we saw many parents sitting and watching how the class is happening while their child is listening to our live lecture, right, in the lockdown period, which is good because they're trying to understand. and they're getting involved in the whole thing. So parent involvement will also have to be much more than what has been happening earlier, where I'm sorry to say, but parents were kind of outsourcing education to the institution. You can't outsource your child's development. You can outsource only the task of teaching or the task of learning. But this, I hope, will bring back the focus of parent involvement in their development of their children. Society has to change, because the society outside has to accept somebody who may not have a degree but may have a certification or a diploma from an online organization, an online institution. May not be a formal university that we know. It might just be some organization, but a very specialized organization in that particular skill. Society has to accept that. As of yesterday, if you see advertisements, for recruitment, you find, the candidate should be this degree holder or that degree holder. Society has to change. Acceptability of these new normals, the new type of qualifications will necessarily have to change. So adaptability to change will be the essence of future of education of all the stakeholders of the entire ecosystem. There are some fundamental questions, though, which will emerge out of this particular future of education. The question that will emerge, number one, is, will this, if you see technology consistently, as more and more of technology has come in, you have seen more and more of division happening, the digital divide. So there has been a first digital divide, a second digital divide, a third digital divide, and it goes on. So people with access to the radio and those who did not have access to the radio, people with access to the television and those who did not have access to the television, people with access to personal computers and those who don't have access to PCs, the net and those who don't have access to the net, broadband, 4G, 5G, etc., mobile phones, people who have access and people who don't have access. So the question is, will it lead to a further division in society? On the one side, it increases the reach tremendously. The classroom is my global audience. It's not just restricted to 60 students in a physical classroom. My classroom can have 2,000 students. But on the other side is the question that will it actually increase the division of society? Today, you see that happening. It's a stark reality all around you. People who are, the elite schools, the elite universities, the elite colleges in urban areas, they're able to use more and more of newer and newer technology. But what about the the rural areas, the very remote areas where accessibility to the internet is a question, accessibility to smartphones is a question maybe, and so on. So will it increase? This is the question which is happening about the future of education. Will it increase the digital divide? Will it increase differences in society as such? That is one. The second question is about engaging. Because when I'm in a classroom, we all know, because we ourselves studied in that mode where the physical teacher was right there in front of me. And then I taught for 30 years where I was right in front of my students physically. But how do I engage my students now in a different kind of a mode? I cannot use the same method of teaching. As a student, I cannot use the same method of learning also. So both have to change. And the challenge is, how do I, as a teacher, learn to engage my students? It's not just about content, but it is about, because content is readily available. It's about engaging my students in a different manner altogether. And for the student, it is about how I can take the best of these, not only the faculty, but also so much of information all around me, many of which is open access. You see, so a lot of motivation is needed from both the student and the teacher. Okay. The third aspect is, it's a fundamental question that I'm asking, is will online education produce a bunch of softies? Will the next generation be a bunch of softies? Why do I say that? Because how can you learn mining engineering without going into a mine? When you're learning about mines, you have to go to the mine and see what mines are like. If you're studying foundries, you have to go and see a foundry and see what it's like. But today, in this era, it's becoming virtual, and you have simulated mines, you have simulated, foundries, and so on. So, are we producing a bunch of softies in the next generation? People who will hesitate to go into the shop floor, to go into where the trouble is, where the action really is. That is the second question, and that's what we have to address as faculty, as teachers, as administrators, and so on, policy makers, and so on. The next question is, will a way in which a new course has to be designed, will it be digital first? Today, when I'm developing a new course, and every year I love to teach and develop new courses, I teach with that frame in mind that everything is physical in nature. But tomorrow, will my design of the course be based on digital first, right? Again, that is something which is a question mark, which we all have to consider and look at. Yes, and a couple of things I wish to say, again, as we are talking about the future of education. Rabindranath Tagore had said that education should be such that it makes the student, it makes the participant in harmony with the existence around it, around him or around her. So the person, education has to be such that it makes the person completely in harmony, completely in sync with the existence around, nature that is around. When we're talking about virtual, we are not taking the student out anywhere. When, for example, when a teacher is teaching a Fibonacci sequence in mathematics, in the way we have all studied and the way we taught before the lockdown, is the teacher will teach a Fibonacci sequence in the classroom and then go out and show in the garden of the school or of the university, like, look, can you see this flower? Can you see the petals? Are they not following a pattern of the Fibonacci sequence? That's what I'm saying. In today's situation, all what we're doing is we're sitting in front of the camera and talking, right? And learning, and so the physical nature, the existence of harmony, surroundings, awareness of surroundings around us, that is also a question. And somehow the future of education, we'll have to look into that. One final point I'm making is that today there's so much of a talk about edu-tech, the focus on edu-tech. My point is the future of education using technology will be, the focus has to come back on the edu side of edu-tech. Today we are focusing on the technology side of edu-tech, but we got to come back to the edu side, the E of ET. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nilay.
Thank you.
How over to you?
Yeah,
for any question answers?
I think we are running against time thanks to my logging in late. Just one question relates from the chat box. I can't ever ask you. What is the one major challenge for digital transformation education?
Yeah, I think one of the major challenges, thank you for your question. I think one of the major challenges that we see is the resistance to change. Everybody has to change in this new normal. And you will find increasingly such kind of technology being used, but the resistance to change, because I'm used to teaching in one way, or I'm used to learning in one way, and that is what I said, and resistance to change at all levels, at all the stakeholders, not just the faculty or the student, but the parents, the institution, the regulators, the society as a whole. Everyone has to accept this change that is going to happen, and managing resistance to change is one of the huge challenges in digital transformation, and it is true for every new technology, but here I think it is even more pronounced.